Getting everything set up. Right, cool. Looks like we have quite a lot of people coming in. Still probably more expected. Let me go ahead. All right, cool. So yeah, cool. So thanks everyone for joining us. I know it's quite late in the night, but I'm hoping most of you guys are home because of coronavirus. So everybody's gotten some time off from work or I'm not able to do it. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, looks like everybody's joined. Okay, so yeah, so I was saying I think everybody has some time off, so I thought this week we'll have some sort of more uh, hands-on sessions and predominantly take sort of a lot of questions from you guys in terms of career direction, roadmaps, being student and trying to map out your career journey is always a tough, challenging time as well because there's so much sort of confusion, etc. As well. So we'll keep the session very interactive and very engaging. I want to keep 90% of the question, like sort of time, focused on just answering questions. Um, so you guys can just start putting down whatever questions you might have directly in the chat, and I'll start picking them up as well. So before we get started, I'll just quickly introduce myself as well in case somebody's not aware. So my name is Mayank Grover. I'm the founder of Outscale and started working on this about almost 2 years back now. And we've been working predominantly with game developers and web developers. I've personally been in the industry for more than 10 years now. Graduated way back in 2009 from Delhi College of Engineering, went to US, worked in DShaw, a bunch of other companies in US as well, moved back, bunch of more companies, etc. as well. So today we're gonna just talk about pretty much everything under the sun in terms of career opportunities and career roadmaps. And a little bit of time, I definitely want to focus on this new trend of sort of remote job opportunities. So some of you might be familiar with it, others might not be, but I'll give a quick sort of a brief overview of what it is. So I've been predominantly working remotely for the last 5 to 6 years since I moved back from US. And in some shape or form, there has been some component of remote work throughout my journey. So quick sort of, show of hand in terms of yeses or no. How many of you are kind of familiar with what remote work is or have heard of this term called remote working slash distributed teams? Um, can just leave a yes or a no in the chat or just use the raise the hand feature as well. Okay, so yeah. So others are not familiar with it, I'm guessing. Okay, so let me quickly explain what exactly happens in terms of what remote working is all about, slash what the whole concept of remote slash distributed teams is. So as you know that there are certain high popularity tech hubs around the world, right? So San Francisco, New York, Hong Kong, Dubai, London, there are certain segments in the world where there is too much demand for technical talent. Of course, these are specific locations, and there isn't enough talent that's available. Okay, so what companies have started doing is they've started hiring talent that is international, maybe even local, but in different cities and different geographies. And as a result, what happens is that you're working as a full-time employee of a company, just that you're not working from a physical location. Okay, so I'm sure if most of you might have heard of this term called GitHub, right? So it's a very popular website. Almost a lot of developers use it every day, right? There is another company called GitLab, okay, which has exactly the same functionalities to a certain extent, even sometimes in certain specific aspects better than GitHub itself. Um, but that company is like I think 300 plus people, and they do not have a physical location of an office, right? They have a headquarters I think in San Francisco, but the idea is that the entire team of 300 people are distributed across the world. And with the latest tools and technologies such as Zoom, where now we are doing this live conference call and doesn't matter where you are, right? Uh, there is possibility that teams are able to work collaboratively, distributedly. So this opens up a world of opportunities for companies in New York, in US, in Europe, wherever they might be, for hiring talent globally. And I have worked personally with a lot of such companies. You can think of a location, a tech hub, and I've probably worked with a company there, be it in part-time, full-time capacity in different ways. But the idea is that sitting here from the comfort of your home, you can, work. Of course, it's much harder. Reason being, now you're not just competing with people that are available within a specific geography, right? But you're working with, or rather, you're competing for the same kind of job opportunities with a talent that's distributed throughout the world, right? So naturally, trying to crack into them is much harder, but it's much more rewarding as well, right? So there are certain things that you can essentially do if you are a developer that you can to unlock these opportunities. And that's where I think people who start doing these things towards their final year can take a little bit of time, because then they have to worry about getting a local job right now, and then parallelly start ramping up their profile. So if you're early in your career, first year, second year, now might be the best time to start focusing on it, so that by the time you're able to graduate, you already have sort of a profile ready that showcases you as a solid remote developer. So there are two or three main points that you kind of need to keep in mind, and beyond that, it becomes very specific. And also, as you mature in your career and your journey as a developer, right, you'll start to unlock new things as well, right? So first is obviously having online code presence. So having GitHub account, having GitLab account, where you're putting up every possible project that you work on, for that any future employee slash company to check out, so that they can reach out to you instead of you reaching out to them. So you want to change that equation, right? Instead of you having to go on to job sites and apply 50 times, you want your profile to be out there, and that way companies can discover your profile potentially and actually reach to you that, hey, are you interested in this opportunity? Seems like a good fit, right? So you want to reverse that equation. Okay, and for that you need to start building up your portfolio, start building up projects, whatever it is. It doesn't matter, right? Like I'm talking right now generic, right? You could be passionate about Android development, Flutter, React, web development, AI, whatever it is, right? There are job opportunities available remote, right? Some might have more job opportunities, other might have less job opportunities due to different reasons, but there are job opportunities that are available for remote work, essentially in every aspect that you can think of, okay, especially related to coding and development, okay, because the sheer nature of coding is that you can work collaboratively by even not being in a physical location, even in single place, okay. So first thing, having a GitHub presence is super important. Having a portfolio is super important. Second, and probably by far the most important, is try to become a contributor in some or the other open source project. Okay, and this is very important for companies that are hiring distributed developers, right? Developers that are distributed across the globe. The reason for that is, once you start working on open source repositories, right, that means your code is at the level that a community of kick-ass developers think it's ready, right? Like you are at that level that you have gotten this sort of stamp of approval from an international community saying that your code is now up to the mark to get added to an international level software community. Okay, and that's a very strong signal to these companies that you're passionate about software development, you really love doing what you're trying to do, and you're doing it for free. Like you're so passionate about it that you want to contribute to open source, and that you have the right skills. Okay, it's bigger than any degree that you can present on the resume if you have contributions in any open source project. So try to hone in on these two things, and that alone are gonna unlock a world of opportunities for you. And I can tell you that right now, that if you're say first year student right now, you start working slowly towards XYZ career goal, right? Like you want to become the best web developer available, right? Within the next 2 years, if you end up raking into 8 or 10 personal projects or small team projects with your friends or whatever, right? You have this presence on online. You start working towards contributing to some open source project, let's say React, let's say some other framework that you pick up. Google Summer of Code is a good example, that it has a lot of open source projects that you can kind of connect to and get mentors who can actually contribute. But even if you're not able to crack into GSOC, don't worry about it, because there are a lot more projects out there that you can directly just literally Google for and figure out which one do you think has a good strong community, and you can try and enter into that as well. Okay, and every open source project has its own types of guidelines that you can learn about and figure out that what is the right way for you to join that particular community, how they expect their code standard to be. And of course, if you're a C++ developer, you need to find C++ projects. That goes unsaid, right? Like if you're a web developer, you have to find web projects, etc. Right? So figure out which are the right projects. Talk to people who are already contributors on those projects. Find them not just on GitHub, but maybe their email, maybe their social handles. Go check Twitter, right? Try to figure out where these people are present, understand what they're talking about, and try to add to those conversations, right? So you're trying to connect with these people virtually, be it on LinkedIn, be it somewhere else, and that way you're getting more familiar yourself, getting yourself familiar with how these people are working, right? How these people are maintaining these projects, and that way naturally it will come to you that all right, this is the kind of submissions I want to do, these are the kind of issues I want to pick up, and start with contributing small. Once your submissions get accepted, once your submissions get reviewed, and you'll first few times it will happen 99% of the time that your submissions will get rejected, right? They'll say, okay, this particular piece is not written based on a particular standard that they follow, or you have violated certain coding design guidelines or documentation guideline or something, right? Like you didn't write unit testing for it. There will be a shit ton of problems, right? But trust me that working through those problems, you're going to learn a ton more than you can ever imagine working on any other piece of code. Okay, so this will really help you in taking your game to the not just the next level, next to next level, right? And all for free, right? While you are take out 1 hour of PUBG time and allocate it to this every day, and trust me, within 2 years, you'll be better than people who are 3 years work experience in the industry, right? Because this is gonna unlock that huge level of difference between sort of the local standard of development versus the international. I mean, maybe I'm using the wrong terms there, versus local versus international standard, but I just mean based on the quality difference that they expect, right? So that is the bar that you want to unlock. And you'll be thinking, okay, this feels like too much hard work, but actually it isn't. If you really are in love with what you're trying to do and you really want to become developer, right? You'll love start doing these things, right? The harsh reality in India, at least, is that majority people take BTech because some relative told their parents that they should put their son and daughter into BTech, right? And that usually ends up kind of going slightly wrong way. But if that is not the case, I would highly encourage that you guys try to work on these kind of paradigms, and then start learning and building up your projects. So that will unlock for you. And by the time you reach your final year, trust me, you'll not be hunting for job opportunities. Job opportunities will already be there, and you'll be figuring out, all right, I have too many projects. With the which project I need to work on, right? Like you'll have to focus on that, right? And I already know people who are in third years, and they are skipping college because they're working on paid projects for companies in Australia, in Dubai, whatever, because they had such a strong online presence. They were part of communities where they were able to engage, right? And there are a ton of Discord communities, Slack communities that you can join and start interacting with people, submitting your code for code reviews and such, right? So try to be part of these communities, and uh, I can tell you that you do not need to spend a penny, a single rupee to become that international developer, you can become that international developer for absolutely zero cost if you have the passion or the drive. But if you need mentors, reach out to people. If you need support, reach out to your peers, right? There are ample networks as well. We are trying to build our own Discord community as well. I don't know, most of you guys might already be on there. If not, please do join. But ultimately, the goal is to have a good, healthy community of developers who can help each other out and are in going through that similar journey. Okay, so that's a big sort of a high level picture of how remote works unlock. There are certain, the last piece that I'll add is that if you want to start searching for remote job opportunities, right? So let me share my screen as well. So this will give you specific pointers about how you can go about it. So there are, certain kind of websites that purely list remote jobs. Okay, so you can go to LinkedIn and find that as well. And you can go to certain of these kind of job opportunities, like job listing portals where you can find opportunities for pretty much every kind of a development, right? So remote OK is a popular one. We work remotely is another one. So these are just a couple of sort of high visibility ones that get a lot of job opportunities, or rather jobs listings. And you can go and check that these opportunities, and it will tell you, right, like this particular opportunity is remote, but it's only applicable to people in USA, right? So you don't need to waste your time on this, right? But this one is remote and it's available full time, right? So the opportunities will list what kind of regions they're restricted to. Otherwise, they will like 100% remote and anywhere, right? So you can definitely apply. I mean, I'm guessing most of you are not a lead developer yet, but there are like sort of experience restrictions. But the point is that you can, understand that these are publicly available information, right? Like there's nothing stopping you from going out and hunting these yourself, right? And you can even do sort of you can reverse engineer your job career path, right? And what I mean by that is that don't just say that I want to be an Android developer because somebody told me so, right? Like literally half of our BTech audience is because they're in BTech because somebody told them so, right? Instead, let's use science to figure out whether that's a good opportunity for us or not, right? So start with how many jobs do you see for that particular segment that you're trying to understand, right? Like if you think I want to become an AI developer, right? I want to become an AI engineer, go on to specific, at least top 3 job profiles website, right? Whichever it is, LinkedIn, some other Naukri, whatever you think is the highest profile for the kind of job that you're looking at, right? Search for how many jobs exist. Okay. Ayush, voice problems. Anybody else facing voice problems? There might be a little bit of an echo because right now the room is empty. Okay, so it might be some network issue on your end. All right. So, like I was saying, that reverse engineer your job prospect itself. Okay. So, find out how many jobs exist for a certain segment. Do this research for multiple things, right? So today I get, people ask me that, hey, I want to become an Android developer, and I tell them that Android development job opportunities are slightly on the decline. Okay. And they're like, no, 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 no. Some senior told me that you should do Android only. So that's why I want to learn Java. And I asked them why. There's a big no fucking answer because some senior told them, right? So the biggest problem that we get stuck into is that we don't uh, get sort of reference from people in the industry, but we, take advice from our parents, our siblings, our, relatives who are not at all in the industry. If they are in the industry, great, absolutely worth taking their advice. But if they're not in the industry, right, that you're trying to enter into, then it's not going to be valuable advice, right? It's like asking a carpenter that should I become a doctor, right? It's just not going to work because they're not going to have insight on that industry that you're trying to enter into, and vice versa as well, right? You can't ask a doctor that should I become a carpenter or not? Does it have good job opportunities, right? It just doesn't work. So like somebody really strongly said this last week to me that the biggest problem in India is that in education we end up taking advice from our parents. So like they belong to a different generation, and now time has completely changed. And 10 years back, my parents didn't want me to go into game development, and I was able to build a career in it. So if I had taken that advice, I would probably be doing something very different and not being the path that I took. So my point is that let's take advice from people who are in the industry that you're trying to reach out to, and then make calculated decisions as to where you want to be. Okay, so you can look at these websites, you can look at LinkedIn, and figure out what kind of job opportunities are actually existing in the market, and then you want to try and become that, right? Unless you are like, hey, fuck no, I am only passionate about Android. This is all I want to do, and I don't know anything else. Then absolutely become Android, right? Become Android dev, right? Like nothing's gonna stop you, because even if there are less job opportunities, or rather the job opportunities are declining because there are other technologies that are taking over, right? Similarly, PHP is one example where the job opportunities are declining because companies are moving away from PHP to some other newer technologies, right? React and Node and majority JavaScript stack. Uh, but the point is that if you are like, for some reason you are ridiculously passionate about PHP, become a PHP developer, right? Like break the shit out of PHP, right? Like know ins and out of everything that you can, and build projects back and forth, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't care about the trend, right? You don't care if 5 years back there were 10,000 job opportunities for PHP, and today there are only 5,000 opportunities. You just need one, right? So you just need only one opportunity to make it work for you. You don't care whether there were 10,000 and now there are 5,000, right? So if you become the best that's out there, naturally you will get opportunities, right? So if you're passionate about something, absolutely. If you're open-ended, let's do the research and figure out and work our way backwards to figure out which is the kind of right opportunity we should be aiming for. And I think that's one critical decision that people don't make in their lives, and end up sort of repeating the cycle that let me first become this, let me first become that, let me first become something else. Right? So that's the problem that you should try and avoid, and use the first sort of 3 to 4 years of your, while you're still in college or masters or whatever you might be doing. Let's use that as well. And if you have entered the work environment already, right, still you have a lot of time. So we have a program that's like, we have multiple batches for game developers and web developers that are already going, that are working professional, and they're looking to upgrade themselves to the next level, right? So we have people from 4 years experience to final year students as well, right? All kind of in the mix of similar program. And they realize that in order for them to move to the next level in the career, they need help, right? They need mentorship, they need guidance, right? And those are the only kind of things that obviously you can't just get from online blogs and YouTube videos, right? You can learn essentially everything you want to, but when it comes to mentorship and guidance, there needs to be a human touch, right? Like that's something that can't be absorbed from Reddit or any such medium, right? So for that, you would need somebody to help you and guide you. But rest pretty much 99% you can crack it yourself. Okay. Cool. So let me just stop my screen here. Right. So somebody's saying the voice is cracking. Not sure. Seems to be that nobody else is asking the same thing. So I'm gonna assume that it's something transient. But yeah, cool. So that's sort of a high level overview about sort of work opportunities, remote, etc., etc. I would love to now dive into specific questions. Again, they don't need to be specific to remote explicitly. If you have general questions, be it based on your current, you're a final year student preparing for XYZ things, whatever it might be, just start putting them in the chat, and we can start taking them up as we go along. And we'll keep it sort of more interactive as well. Okay. Uh, yeah, cool. So, any questions, guys? How many of you, by the way, are have already joined the Google Classroom setup? Yes. Okay, I see a few hand raises. Okay, quite a few. Okay, cool. So just to give you a quick idea about Google Classrooms as well. So as I mentioned before, um, I did my master's in US, right? And here, most of you guys might be familiar with Delhi College of Engineering, or Delhi Technological University, one of the top 10 engineering colleges in the country, right? So I did my bachelor's from there, worked at D Shaw, went to Carnegie Mellon is the university that I went to for my master's after working in the industry for 3 years, right? Um, there is a very big difference in what education fundamentally happens in US and what happens here. Okay, even though I went to the top 10 colleges in the country, still the difference is so huge that I was completely stunned as to how big this difference is, right? So what we have tried to do in how we are structuring in our sort of courses and how we are structuring our sort of learning experiences at Outscale is we are trying to bring that same level of structure that I learned there and kind of opened my eyes in terms of how learning should be, right? And everything revolves around two simple concepts. One is projects and one is mentors. Okay, just these two things, right? Fuck teaching, nobody cares. There's so much information out in the world that you can learn for yourself. If just told that, hey, go learn this, today 99 people are smart enough to learn it themselves, right? But the thing that they really need help with is the other part that I mentioned earlier as well, right? Like the mentors part, right? And that is where we try to do our part and connect students with the right mentors in the right context, right? And what we do is that we break, and you can see this sort of setup for those who have already joined Google Classroom, right? You'll see this kind of a setup that everything sort of revolves around this idea of a project. Okay, and so for one instance, right, like for the students that are right now enrolled in our web development program, right, the first project once they start working on the web development module is they have to make their own portfolio, right? They have to build their own presence online, right? And for that they learn HTML, they learn CSS, they learn some intermediary concepts as well, basics of JavaScript, but all in the context of applying it to that particular project, right? I'm not asking you to learn JavaScript for the fuck of it, right? Like it's just not because, hey, I think it's important, you should learn it, but it's basically because you need to apply it to the project that you're working on. So it's always application based. And the biggest problem right now in our education system is that everything we teach in BTech, in BCA, MCA, whatever it is, right? It's all theory, right? Like, oh, let's learn this algorithm, let's learn this, mug it up for one night, write it down on a piece of paper the next day morning, forget about it by the afternoon, right? Like that's how the entire system has been built, and that's how we've been told to do things, right? But here, everything is about projects, right? I don't care how many marks you score on an exam. Um, can you actually implement shit, right? If I present you a problem, can you solve it, right? If I ask you to code a particular piece of feature in the game or in a project, in an app, whatever you're trying to build, can you do it, right? It all comes down to projects. Okay, so everything is kind of revolved around this idea of a project, and during the course of sort of, be it in a 6 month program that somebody has applied for, 9 month program, there are different kind of structures available, but the idea is that you're still working on projects through and through. So every time you learn something new, it's always in the context of applying it to the project. And this was the biggest change going from DC to Carnegie Mellon that I personally felt, and that's what we are trying to bring here as well now. That you need to learn from projects, and then when you get stuck on a project, it's not that somebody's going to sit and teach you some shit, right? You're smart enough to learn those things yourself if there is somebody to point you in the right direction. Hey, you're thinking like this, but let's look at this problem in a different way. Let's try to look at from this side and see, can we try and come up with a better solution? And that's going to open up your mind on how you can think about solving problems, because today engineers only do one thing, which is solving problems. It doesn't matter whether you're solving problems in Java, whether you're doing it in Python, none of that shit matters, right? If you're smart, you'll pick up Java. If you're smart, you'll pick up Python. If you're smart, you'll pick up C Sharp. Whatever needs to be picked up, you will pick it up, as long as you have the right attitude towards problem solving and you have the right logical skill set, right? And this is exactly what contributing to open source also indicates, right? If you can contribute, that means you're smart at problem solving, and you can follow proper guidelines and code quality standards, and those are the two things that you're able to showcase. Cool. Let me take a look at the questions. There are some questions here. Still first year BTech. Should I go for masters in game development? Okay, so one question is that should I go for masters in game development? I'm going to abstractly answer this for should I go for masters in fill in the blanks, right? Because I think the answer kind of applies everywhere. So I think what it's the same thing, right? Like you can apply the same question to say, should I go for even the bachelor's in game development or bachelor's in so and so thing, right? The point is, what is exactly that you're trying to get out of it? That is something that you should try to visualize. Okay. So if you're saying that, hey, I want to go to a different country altogether for a master's in a certain program, are you trying to stay there? Is it a way for you to get a visa there, right? Then maybe the answer is yes. You might not get a direct visa there, right? But if your job is to that, all right, I'm just going to go learn and then come back and work here in the industry or build my own thing, do my own startup, whatever it is for you next, right? If you have that clarity, right, then I don't think you should. Because today, the whole goal of getting a master's degree is to boost your profile, right? But if you look at the development community, right, if you look at how companies are hiring engineers today, especially developers, right, they're not caring about what kind of credentials you have in terms of degrees, right? So what's more essential is, can you showcase that you have the right skill set as to what they're looking for? If they're looking for an engineer with 3 years experience in React.js or in Python and data sciences or whatever, right? You need to showcase that you have that kind of experience and skill set, right? They'll still conduct their 6 rounds of interviews. They'll still do everything. Doesn't matter whether you have the masters or not, right? So if you're trying to get into another country just for the visa for it and trying to settle there, then that might be the only route that you have to take. Okay, I have to go for masters and hopefully settle there for good. That is an absolutely correct way. But then I would say there are cheaper ways to do that as well. Okay, so I'll not go into those details yet. But my point is that first you need to figure out what is the end goal you're trying to do. A lot of people end up doing things blindly without realizing what the thing is that they want on the other side. Okay, so first define what you want on the other side of this master's program or even bachelor's program. If you have, if I don't know, if we have somebody in our audience today who's not even entered into a bachelor's, right? That might be a good question for them to think about. What are you trying to get out of bachelor's? And frankly speaking, with you guys, we have seen a lot of applicants coming to us who have just finished their 12th standard, and they're saying that I'm not going to get into a bachelor's program because people are questioning the degree value of a degree today, right? If everything is getting towards skills, then at least for developers and coders, degrees are losing meaning, right? So a master's is not going to help you. If you really want to do masters, first I would say work in the industry a little bit, get a better sense of what exactly you want to do. When I graduated back in 2009, I had no fucking idea. I was just getting into DShop because I got campus placed, and it's one of the best companies that gave the highest package in the entire fucking campus. So obviously, duh, why would anybody give up that, right? So I got placed, but I was for sure knew that I'll not go for masters because I did not know whether I wanted to continue doing that or not. So it's always better to start working first and figure out what exactly you want to do before you end up taking that decision of your masters. And start working remotely, start working for companies for free as well if you have to, right? Because as an apprentice, as an intern, you might end up learning a lot more things, right? So that way you'll be able to unlock a lot more potential for you down the road as well. Okay. And that's just going to give you real practical exposure. Practical exposure just doesn't come in terms of full-time job. It just comes in terms of how much experience you have working with professionals, right? Not just friends within the same hostel group, even though that constitutes as projects, but you want to try and expand your professional horizons as well. Okay. Cool. So there's another question. I want to do MS after my BTech. What can I do right now? Help me out. Okay. So I think I answered that question at length now. So hopefully that's clear, Rahul. If you meant something else, just frame the question again. Um, Krunal is asking, what should I do as I am in my first year? Projects. So just start working on projects for 1 year. Pick one thing that you want to work on. Okay, whatever that you think is excites you. Okay, it might be that right now AI seems very exciting. Okay, pick AI. Just you know uh, lick the shit out of every YouTube video available on AI, right? And soon you'll start to realize there's so much fucking math inside AI, it's going to make your head spin. right? A lot of people get fascinated. Oh, AI this, AI that. Let me become an AI developer. The moment they spend 2 weeks trying to do AI, there's so much math going on under the hood. You're like, fuck no, dude, I can't do this, right? So for 1 year, pick one thing and stick with it. If you can, by the end of that year, still continue to learn it, implement projects in it, you might be passionate about it. Do it for the next year as well, right? And you might give up in second year saying, no, 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 I'm already bored. That's a good indication that you don't want to build a career there, right? Then you jump to the next stuff and figure out what is this next thing that you want to do, right? So don't just look after the hype as to what's hyped in the market, but try to figure it out for yourself. Can you stick with this? Because you end up taking a job and then now you're screwed, because going from an AI job to a web job, it will be much harder. So do that in your first year, second year, third year, because there's no consequence of failure there, right? So this is the best time to explore stuff. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, but try to do a lot of projects though. Okay. Okay, Vikramaditya is asking, I'm working on Unity AR VR, and from the last 2 years, I'm third year BTech. How can I get a good package in a game dev field? Students who haven't done anything in their 4 years of BTech, they are also getting average of 4 LPA packages. Yeah, I mean, so that tells you everything, right? Like students who didn't do anything are getting four. If you're already in second year or third year, whichever you wrote, and you have already been working for 2 years, naturally you are way ahead of the curve, right? So I don't know what you define as good. Are you talking about good package in being 25 lakhs? I don't know what you mean by good. Good is very relative, but I can tell you that normally gaming companies have a different benchmark versus AI companies versus web companies. It's purely a matter of understanding what the market in your current segment is. Okay, so if there is too much demand for AI engineers, then and the lack of AI engineers naturally means there is a mismatch. That means the value and the price of an individual engineer goes up, right? You can apply the same philosophy to onions as well, right? If there's high demand for onions, prices naturally go up, and if the supply is low, right? But you can have to do that and do some understanding of what exactly you're trying to do, because even for Unity AR VR, that's a very broad segment, right? AR VR has its own sort of job opportunities. Unity has its own sort of job opportunities. So you want to do market research onto what is the market price for an entry level developer, and how do you want to get into some of the best ones. I know the best ones can offer up to 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs for starting developers between the 0 to 2 year experience range segment, right? So that's a good starting point for a gaming industry professional, and that's a very broad number because obviously it depends a lot on the company, on the location, etc. as well, right? So a company in Bangalore would pay higher because it's more expensive to live in Bangalore versus in Ahmedabad. So you have to take those factors into account as well. Okay. Which gaming engine is the best for development? I think that's a very old beaten question. So again, there is no way to define best. There are so many different engines. You just want to pick one. Again, pick one and stick with it. Build projects with it, because I think even if you try to compare Unreal versus Unity, there are equal number of job opportunities in both. There are a little bit more job opportunities in Unity versus Unreal, but then again, as an individual, you only need one, right? You don't need 10,000 job opportunities in parallel to land a job, right? You just need to crack one. And if you're just doing that for the 3 to 4 years, you'll be able to do that, right? So just pick one, stick with it, and that's it. Then you'll be able to do fine. Make sure that you're putting up all your projects on GitHub. Okay, that's why I left AI and ML. I'm guessing you're talking about the math point. That's why you left AI and ML. So that's expected. Krunal, I've applied for internships in end of summer in data sciences, collaboration with Microsoft, I think. All right. Well, good luck for the internships. Rohit is asking, I'm a first year BTech student. I'm currently working on Flutter project. So Rohit, that's great. Flutter is definitely one of the more up and coming sort of technologies. Google is pushing it heavily because they want it to be the technology for every platform. You write code once, kind of deploy it in all possible places. Now they have even launched your Windows platform and the web as well. I think last January, or forgot when it was, when I saw the Flutter 1.0 conference. So I think they introduced multiple other frameworks as well. So yeah, Flutter seems like to be the, again, it has a lot of hype around it. So you might want to distill the hype down to its true essence, and actually start working on a lot of Flutter-based projects as well. And I personally know 5 companies that are trying to get Flutter engineers as interns because they're not finding engineers with existing knowledge of Flutter because it's such a new thing, right? So there is high demand, but selected demand, right? So you need to you need to know where that demand is, and then these companies are usually willing to pay good prices for even interns as well, right? Uh, Kunal, I'll be taught first month of internship and next month we'll work on projects, and I'm also learning Flutter as well. All right, cool. So typically when internships say that they'll teach you, I get a little bit reluctant to some extent, and I'll tell you why. So think of it from, forget yourself, right? Try to put yourself in the shoes of the company, right? The company that's hiring you, right? So if they are asking that, okay, we'll hire you as an intern, right? Ideally, internships are supposed to be paid, right? So assuming this is a paid internship, right? So why would somebody hire you, pay you, and teach you, right? Like if a company could do that, couldn't the college be doing that, right? So always try to put yourself in the other person's shoe or other company's shoe and understand what exactly they are trying to do, and they need to see a benefit for themselves as well, right? Ultimately, they're not doing it for charity. I'm guessing this is not an NGO, right? And they're not doing this for free, and you're not doing it out of the goodwill of your heart, right? So you need to understand. Okay, so well, there you go. It's a non-paid internship. So this solves all the answers. But my point is that even if it was, right, you want to try and understand why somebody is doing something that they're telling you to do something, right? So a good example of this is that a lot of students come to us and say, hey, we can learn everything for free on YouTube. Why should we ever pay for any sort of a program to learn, right? And I say, absolutely, you can, right? But try to understand what is it that the YouTube community that you're watching for is, what is their goal, right? So if I'm a YouTuber, I'm putting out developer videos, etc. I'm not saying everybody's goal is that, but the point is that they want to make smaller videos so that they can put videos every day because that's what YouTube's algorithms work on, right? And they want to make videos that are more sort of clickbaity in nature so that more people watch it, more chances of showing ads, and that's how they make money as well, right? There's no wrong in it. I'm just saying, of course, they're trying to make money as well, and which is valid. But you want to understand what their goal is, and then work your way backwards as to does that align with your goal. Okay, so majority people end up saying, okay, there is a free course, there is a partial paid course, there is a fully paid course. I'm going to go for the free course, but understand that you can get more benefit out of something just by paying for it versus something for free. You can still derive benefit from the free thing, absolutely, and you should, right? 100% you should, but understand that they might have a different motive in mind, right? So from that perspective, try to analyze from the other person's view what exactly they're trying to get from that relationship, and then see whether this relationship is beneficial for you or not. Okay, and you can apply that to everything in this life, right? Like doesn't matter, just not from internship, but from job, from personal relationships, and literally everything as well, right? I'm getting PUBG as well. So Ashok, I have 3 years of non-technical experience. Is it okay to switch now? I'm not concerned about the package, but a good start. Absolutely, Ashok. So, in our very first batch last year, we had a mechanical engineer who wanted to switch into game development as a professional career, and he was doing some small indie games here and there in between. But he was a 2015 graduate, joined our first batch in 2018, and then now he's working with one of the biggest game companies in the country, Game Shastra. So my point is that irrespective of what background you come from, I keep going back to this skill versus degree kind of a differentiation. If you can show the right kind of skills, right, any prospective engineering manager will be happy to interview you, right? But just that you need to show that you have the right skills, right? You can't be just all talk that hey, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. You need to show them that you have done this, done that, right? Instead of talk about it. So, and the best way to show it is have projects publicly available on your GitHub, GitLab, wherever you have your account. GitHub probably because it's much more approachable for majority of the people. Okay, Raghav, is there any demand for electronics microcontroller engineers in the industry, or should I start working on software IT and I'm in my third year? Okay, so I'll not say there is no demand, but relatively speaking, naturally there is a lot more demand in computer science, right? So the only caveat I will say is that if you're really passionate about it, stick with electronics, microcontrollers. There are a lot of fun things happening in the industry, especially around self-driving cars, self-driving trucks. There's so much in terms of mobility sector right now. Electric scooters and whatnot, right? A whole new field has opened up in terms of using, IoT devices and whatnot, right? So it's not that just the focus is limited towards computer science, because ultimately development code also needs to run on hardware, right? And hardware is built by electronics, communications, and a lot of these guys, right? So understand that there is going to be always demand for that as well. Just that you might have it a little harder to figure out which are good opportunities and which are average opportunities, right? Because the limited, they're going to be a little bit limited. Okay. So in that sense, you I don't want to dismiss it outright, because there is demand for still electronics folks as well, and especially if you can get into embedded systems, which are now gaining a lot more traction because of your IoT devices and your fucking fridge getting smarter with temperature sensors and whatnot shit, right? Every device is getting connected with smart offices and smart houses and whatnot, right? So there is a lot of demand, and of course there is a layer of software, but there is an underlying layer of hardware as well, right? So you want to again do the math, go and research how many opportunities for such kind of job profiles exist today, okay, and what's the perspective by the time you graduate, right? And if you can see that there is a decent enough demand for it and it's not going to die off immediately and go down to zero, then you should continue doing that as long as you're passionate about it. If you're not passionate about it, they're like, I just got into electronics because my rank was that, and that was the best available option in my orientation while entering BTech, then probably you can look into exploring computer science as well, because now you're like, passion doesn't matter. It's more about what is the best opportunities, right? So you can try and work your way backwards from there. Best in terms of teaching, what your game development, even our assignment is based on games, but how are web development guys? Okay, great question. So the question is that because my background is in game development, but the assignments are also based on games. And how about web development guys? I'm not sure what you mean by how about web development guys, but I'm guessing your question is that the quality of game developers versus quality of web developers, are they the same? I'm guessing that's what you're saying, right? So good question. So first, I didn't start as a game developer. I've done a lot of different things over the course of my life. Right now, I write web development script, Node.js, bots, and whatnot plugin every other day. So by the time you reach to that stage in your career, you're not restricted to one technology. You end up doing a lot of things. Okay. But that being said, I'm not an expert at web development. I'm not an expert at AI. I'm not an expert at any of other things. I spent the last 8+ years in gaming alone, right? And when I say gaming alone, it's not just Unity, right? So we build servers as well in Java, in Node.js for multiplayer games, and host them on AWS across the globe. So gaming also has a lot of component of what you classically think of as part of web alone, right? But that being said, I don't do all the teaching for web, right? There are other mentors dedicated for web who are more expert, much more expert than me. Overall, they might have lesser experience than me in the industry, but they do things hands-on, right? So we have right now for our web batch, we have a guy from IIT BHU who's 5 years experience and right now doing mentorship for our web students on their HTML, CSS, and kind of the first couple of projects as well. And then we have another mentor who's going to be taking up Node.js and backend systems as well, right? So uh, while I do a lot of high-level architecture for what all we need to be teaching, how we need to be teaching about it, and thinking about that stuff, the details in terms of how we design the curriculum, what all projects we need to give, etc., right? those all details are curated heavily by the mentor himself. I don't take that responsibility just because I don't work every day in and out within those systems, and that's for them to do, right? Like if you ask me, hey, can you build an app in Flutter doing blah blah blah? Absolutely, I know about it because I've read enough about Flutter. I've done some dummy projects with Flutter because I'm a curious developer myself. That's what I do. After I close the session, I'm gonna go check out some random technology for 2 hours in the night, and that's how I learn and keep myself up to date. But if you tell me that you need to create a course for students for 6 months on Flutter alone, I'm not gonna do that, right? Because there are much better people out there who can do that very well, and I'm gonna bring them in, take their advice, and use them, who use their knowledge to build this particular platform, right? So hope that answers your question. And I think one more thing that you mentioned was that we're building games, right? So what I've seen is that if you can build games, games are actually more challenging. Building games is more challenging than apps, right? The reason for that is that in games, even the slightest break in user experience destroys the entire game experience. Okay, but apps can get away because there's a lot of static nature inside apps, right? So if you can build a good solid game, you can transition into building similar things for an application. Okay, of course, certain things are going to be different, but games are by their nature much more demanding, both on the user experience, both on the technology as well, right? Like how robust your code needs to be. So if you can build good game logic, you can build good app logic as well. Okay, the logic remains the same. Right now, you're still young, so you can't abstract the logic as to how that works. But if you end up working on both the kind of projects, probably 5 years down the line, you'll be able to understand what I'm trying to say. That if you abstract away the layer of a game versus an app and see it from a core code level, right? Like how do you think about designing code and systems within these games are much more demanding and challenging, right? Generally speaking, I'm not saying one specific game versus one specific app, but generally across the board, that's how the nature of the beast is, right? So that way, if you can build these systems up, you can actually get them up and running. And who says web developers don't build games, right? There are ample web developers who are working in game companies and they're building games as well, right? Cool. Hopefully that answers your question. I've done IoT. So Raghav is saying I've done IoT and AVR Studio and still working on it, and also microcontrollers programming. All right, great. Sounds good. I'm a first year student, and what should I be beginning steps for me? Currently, I'm being taught HTML, C, etc. Okay, so I think HTML and C are perfectly good start. I would say mature from C and directly jump into C++ to a certain extent. That will help you a long way. And then once you enter C++, just stick with it. Okay. If you don't have other resources, just join uh, the Google Classroom setup that we have. It starts off with C++. The reason I say C++ is because uh, practically C is not used almost anywhere, negligible usage in the industry, but C++ still has a very high usage. So fun fact is that a lot of high demand platforms like Facebook, not React, sorry, I think Reddit, I forgot Reddit or some one of these other social media sort of question answering kind of platform. A lot of the core services that they write are written in C++ because C++ gives you the best way to control behavior in terms of getting the best performance out of systems, right? You're not going to use Python, you're not going to use C Sharp, Java, or any of the other high level languages, you're going to use C++. So from an industry perspective, get onto the C++ bandwagon instead of C, and you'll still be able to learn all the same core concepts and then start building your way up from object-oriented programming, and a lot of these other high-level attributes when it comes to building up your knowledge in terms of programming concepts, right? So be it object-oriented programming, classes, structures, all that stuff, right? So move on to that instead of C, and then from there jump into data structures and algorithms as well. On the website, start with HTML. That's great. HTML, go to CSS, start learning a little bit about JavaScript, and start building some basic projects around that. Okay. So if you can hone in till the time you get comfortable with C++ and Java, sorry, HTML, CSS, then just focus on JavaScript. Knock the shit out of JavaScript. That's just going to help you a lot. Okay, so but don't go beyond JavaScript and C++, at least for the next year and a half, right? Till you get super comfortable, right? Krunal, I have an idea for making with the Flutter app, but don't know if that is possible or not. I don't see a reason why you can't start trying, right? Just start trying and you'll know whether that app is possible or not. So best way to figure out is try. What can I do for starting my career in game development, because I'm totally new to it? Again, start learning game development. We are right now. If you just want to start, I'm assuming that you don't have any coding knowledge because you're saying you're just starting totally new. I would recommend that you start with the C++ modules, and that will get you sort of onboarded in terms of getting comfortable learning basic programming, and from there on you can go into specificities of game development itself. One thing I'll mention is that recently we had launched a 10-hour tutorial on getting your first game in Unity 2D, and you can watch that. It's available on YouTube as well. And frankly, that's the first game that even the game developers that are in our paid program, the senior game developers program, they do the same project, right? The project is available for free already. Like, I've launched the project and I tell the people that are entering into our paid batch that, hey, you're going to be doing the same project that's available for 10 hours, and you can do it for free. So the point is that, again, I go back to the same thing that I was mentioning earlier, right? Like, it's my project, my 10 hours of videos that I have created for what I want to teach as the first project to my students, right? And I've launched it for free. It's available. You guys can go and watch it. If you enroll into our paid program, you are going to do the same project, right? The difference is that here you'll be doing it by yourself, and if you have issues and etc. and questions, you'll have to figure it by yourself. But here it's broken down in a structured manner where you're getting sort of milestones as to, okay, first you need to do this, first you need to do that, then this, and in between, me and other mentors will be kind of reviewing and giving you guidance and mentorship, right? So that guidance and mentorship is where the kind of the cost comes in, because now you're asking for people's time, right? So that's what's more important there. But we have built it, we have launched it, and if you want to start learning for free, absolutely, it's out there. You can directly learn by yourself as well. Kunal, can we discuss personally? I'm not sure what exactly are you trying to discuss, Kunal. I'm guessing it's in context of the Flutter app. You can just message in one of the channels on Discord itself. I'm usually there 18 hours a day, so I'll pick it up and see what exactly there is. Most of the Voodoo games have infinite levels. How do they do that? Is it procedural level generation or what? Absolutely, yeah. So you cannot expect static levels to run infinitely, because by their nature you cannot create infinite levels statically, right? So naturally you need to have some sort of procedural level generation. Again, it depends from game to game. Some games might have, simplest way I can think of, right? Like, or at least I can try and tell you is. Uh, you know, think of it that if you have a game with certain, blocks of levels, right? So if you make a pool of 20 such blocks, you can just keep dynamically switching these blocks back and forth, and now you have potentially an infinite type of level, right? So you might not really need procedural generation. It purely depends on what kind of game you're trying to build, and naturally, you can work your way from there. Okay. um, I have issues with thinking logic in programming. What should I do? Again, Harsh, that's a very good question. So normally what you want to do is try to solve as many problems as possible. Okay. So pick up a problem, right? A simple programming problem. Don't pick up hard problems, right? Pick up a simple programming problem, like say it's about how to print a triangle with certain pattern or something, right? Like, or how to detect prime numbers or whatever, right? Don't even touch the keyboard. Okay, take a piece of pencil and paper, try to think about what is the exact steps you need to do in trying to break this problem down. First break it down into smaller pieces and try to tackle one at a time, kind of, right? And from there, try to write down certain lines of code, not code but like pseudo code, right? Like what should you do step by step in English in order to kind of get to a solution. Sorry. If you can't get to that, right, after spending half an hour trying to figure that out, go and look at the solution. Okay, and whatever you had written down, try and compare where was the gap. Okay, problem is that majority people jump into doing code directly, like let me create a function, let me put a variable there, let me do a bool. None of that shit, right? Like stay away from the keyboard till you know exactly what is the logic that you have to do to solve that problem, right? Do it on a piece of pencil or a paper. First figure out whether the logic matches. Okay, once the logic matches, then only go to the keyboard. All right, if the logic is not matching, look at the answer. No problem in, no shame in checking out the answer. Check the answer, compare it with your solution, and try and match and see where were you broken, like where were your thought process broken in between, and where was the disconnect, right? So you can connect the two pieces and then move on to the next problem, and then try to do the same approach there, right? So the more type of problems that you try to come up with in terms of, trying to see first your logical approach and then their logical approach, and then break this logical approach down into pieces and see which pieces did you got correct, which pieces that they got correct, right? Like try to sort of match that, and that way you'll be able to kind of build your confidence up on solving these problems as well. Okay, and there are ample platforms out there that help you do this, right? Like Geeks for Geeks, HackerRank, Hacker. There's so many platforms nowadays. Lead Code is another one that I personally, recommend to a lot of students because I find it much more organized and much more sort of the quality of questions is sort of high. So that's another one that you guys can check out. So there are ample shitload of ample platforms. Just pick one and kind of work your way upwards in terms of difficulties of the questions as well. C++ is good or JavaScript is good for game development? Again, C++ is very specific. You'll be using it in either Unreal or Cocos 2DX or some kind of platform. JavaScript only if you want to build web games, right? But then C# is another one for Unity games. So it purely depends on which platform you're trying to build, games for. So that's the only reason I would say you want to figure out which platform you want to work on, and then from there pick the language, right? So if you're trying to build web games, then JavaScript might be the way. If you're trying to build Unreal games, or rather focus on the Unreal Engine, then C++ and Blueprints is what you want to focus on. If you want to go Unity, then even C# as well. Okay. Which platform I didn't hear? Kunal, I'm guessing you're talking about Discord. So you can get the link for Discord in either Google Classroom or through our website, and you can directly join the community there. So when will the paid classes start for full stack web developer course? The next batch is starting end of this month. So I think 30th is the date, 30th or 31st. I can't remember, but end of this month is when the next batch is kind of starting. Whose issue is logical thinking? Go to HackerRank. Yeah, so HackerRank, Lead Code. Yeah, so same things that I was mentioning. Which platform? HackerRank, HackerEarth. Krunal mentioned it in the chat as well, and there are a lot of these kind of platforms. What about MS? Rahul, I'm guessing you're asking again, masters internationally, right? Like I think I discussed this question in the very beginning. So if in case you joined in late, you can sort of go back and see the recording for it tomorrow. And there's a big lengthy discussion on it as well. Cool. So looks like we are done with the questions for tonight. So I think overall great sort of questions. Covered a lot of different types of topics. If there are any other questions, I'm usually available on our Discord community more or less 18 hours a day. So you guys can feel free to drop in your questions there as well. And if you guys aren't part of classrooms, Google Classrooms that we have set up, try to join it. You can reach out to just go to the website and fill the form there, or ping on Discord, and we can get you access to getting your account set up with Google Classroom. But if you are already, then try to start working your way, especially if you're early in your career, right? Start working your way on C++, and we're unlocking the data structures modules as well during this weekend. And from there on, you'll be able to start, ramping up your learning journey as well. Cool. Where can you put it out? Discord. So just join the Discord community. Okay. I can share you guys the link here as well if you want. Um, Give me 1 second. Let me get the link directly so there's no confusion. Okay, so I think we'll just wrap up. So again, thanks guys for joining in. I know it's fairly late, so appreciate everybody kind of coming in on a short notice. Cool. So I just put down the link for Discord. You guys, anybody who's interested can directly can join the community. You might have to install the app if you're not on Discord. But yeah, cool guys. Awesome session. Good stuff. Overall, I think you might have learned few new things, tips and tricks. But even if it can feel a little bit overwhelming, I think if you start early enough, you guys will get on track to unlock some nice sort of opportunities working remotely. And I personally feel that with the right kind of skill set, anybody can unlock those. And that's where we are trying to move. Rather than just focus on fourth year students and working professionals, we're trying to move more towards students who are just there getting their career started, because I think that's the right time for you to focus on building your career versus at the very end when everybody's fucking I need a job right now, burning situation, right? So cool guys. So I think let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining, and I hope I'll see you guys on in Google Classrooms, and if not, at least in Discord community. And yep, all right, take care, guys. Bye.